This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Dr. Marlene. Great to be with you, and I hope technology doesn't rudely interrupt us this week.
Yes, let's hope. Let's hope. For those who don't know what you're talking about, we did a quarter of a show last week, and I lost internet or something, but we didn't finish it. So we're going to finish it. And George, I think we're going to have to probably kind of start all over. And so I'm going to dive right in. What we're talking about today are things that parents will want to include in their parenting plan. And it's stuff that will make their life much easier. And like I said last week, that may not have gotten broadcast, parents will come in, they'll think they have a plan roughed out. They'll have 6 or 7 items. And I'll start saying, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? And they'll leave with 22 or 23 items. Now, that might sound like a lot, but it will make your life much easier. It covers everything that's going to happen or potentially happen, but doesn't include things, that are not likely to happen. So let me stop there. Do you agree that the more specific and detailed the plan is, the better?
Well, absolutely, and there are certainly provisions that you have drafted that are appropriate for almost any plan. And then when we get to what I call the armed encampment case, where the best we're going to do is have strict instructions on behaviors to be observed by the parents. And so the more problems we have, the more specifics we can include in the plan. If there's going to be a parent coordinator, decision maker, we can make references to that, how to handle conflict. So there's a lot of drafting that is available and that is appropriate for parenting plans. Certainly the provisions that you use are appropriate for almost any plan. And then depending on the specifics of the case, we can wordsmith a lot of things to try to fend off conflict. And the more of the armed encampment type case we have, the more specifics we're going to have. We can have provisions that say on such and such a day between the hours of 5 p.m. and 5:15 p.m. with a 15-minute grace period. Parent A will deliver parent B, so we can get very specific depending on the needs of the case.
Yes, yes. And sometimes we need to include things like after 15 minutes, because you'll get a parent who will leave after 3 minutes and say, it was supposed to be 10 o'clock. You weren't there at 10 o'clock. I left. And so some people will get stupid with their parenting plan if it isn't specific. Now, I would say for most people, we don't have to have anything quite that specific, although I think it's a good idea to put that in every plan. But you do get those people who will say that. And maybe they went along for years and a parent would be 5, 10 minutes late and it was no big deal. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, one parent gets mad at the other, and the first time they're 3 minutes late, the other parent leaves. You were late. So I think we do need to, even cases that appear to be fairly cooperative and congenial, I think we have to include anything like that we think of just in case troubles arise in the future.
Certainly, and I think an example of that is a weather and illness clause that would provide
Yes.
what the behavior the parents are going to observe in the event of weather prohibits transportation
Mhm.
or illness of a child, what the parents are supposed to do, how they handle that situation. And again, so often the counsel that I would give was, have you read your parenting plan? Have you read it
Right.
to first resort? And oftentimes the answer is no. And
I
the answer
know.
is in the parenting plan.
Yes. Yes. Because if they drafted it well, they do include things like that. And that's actually not on my list, but I think I will add it after today because that's a good one. What to do if there's bad weather or a child is sick. Because one parent might think, well, I get to just keep them. The other parent might think, well, it's my time, so I'll go pick them up. Or worse yet, one will think, she can just or he can just keep them, especially if they're sick. And it's going to require that a parent take off from work or something. Often a parent will just dump on the other and say, well, just keep him home then. And that parent's like, well, I wasn't planning on this and it's your day technically. And so we do need to put all those things that we can think of in the plan.
Absolutely. And reference to conflict resolution with the parent coordinator, decision maker,
Mhm.
would be very, very appropriate if we have one of those on the case.
Mhm.
Um, so there are a lot of things we can do to try to control conflict and avoid
Yes.
conflict with the parenting plan.
And let's talk about that for a minute because for those who don't know what we're talking about with a parenting coordinator decision maker, that person can make a decision about something pretty quickly, pretty almost immediately in some cases, not always, but often. And if you wait to go to court, we're talking weeks or months. And so, do you want a resolution today or do you want to wait a few months and get further frustrated? And all that does when parents get more and more frustrated, it just causes the co-parenting relationship to deteriorate. And that's not, of course, what we want.
No, not at all. And so the contingencies that come up on individual cases require sometimes individual provisions, but we can tailor those to the needs of each case and the propensities of the parents to have conflict. We want to keep them on the high road. We want to keep them having easy conflict resolution, which I think is in the parenting plan. And for the parenting plan, for folks who are unfamiliar with that, uh, in the decree or the final order in the case, we will include a parenting plan which has provisions for decision-making authority of the parents and
Mhm.
transportation and all the things that we've talked about are in the parenting plan. So it's
Yeah.
critical that the parenting plan is well drafted and that the parents know that that's a place of first resort for conflict resolution is their parenting plan.
Yes, exactly. Because you're right. Often the parents won't agree and nobody's checked the plan. And one or both parents will say, "Oh, I didn't think it was in there," but they didn't look. They don't
No.
know. They don't know what their plan says. Um, so we kind of start with, I would say, the schedule, the parenting time schedule. But this one right there is an issue of contention if you aren't specific. Because if it simply says, this parent has Monday and Tuesday, this parent has Wednesday and Thursday, and they alternate Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it doesn't say where you exchange, when you exchange, what time, and is parent A picking up from parent B, or parent B dropping off to parent A? Or are they meeting halfway? Are the parents picking the kids up from school? And if that's the case, what do you do? Like right now during summer months when school's not in session. So now where do we pick them up? Is it a daycare, a babysitter, the other parent's home? But all that has to be spelled out to avoid conflict. And I can't imagine people, but I've seen them writing a plan and not saying, on this day at this time, we will exchange at this place or in this manner. But you and I have both seen them.
Yeah, I agree. And again, the higher the conflict between the parents, the more specific provisions we have to have in the plan. And so we can put in provisions which provide for conflict resolution and hopefully conflict avoidance, would be the ideal. But we use that as a tool to help the parents stay on the high road. And so it
Right.
needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to have things like, if you trade parenting time, or you trade holidays or weekends or something, there's going to be a brief memorialization of that agreement, an email, a text, something that shows what the agreement is, what the time frames are, pick up and drop off, and so forth. And we have that in the plan, that there's going to be an email or a text that confirms the agreement, because memories fade, and
Right.
people remember things differently. So to have that in there as well, I think is an ideal provision for most people.
Well, and I'm going to take a little detour here and talk about that because parents don't always agree on what's supposed to happen if they trade time. And if they trade, it's one thing. If they agree and trade, it's one thing. But if one parent says to the other, I can't exercise this day, will you take that day? And they don't work out a trade, then one parent might think they're going to get that back. And the other parent thinks, no, I did you a favor by covering that day, and you forfeit that day. And so it's got to be clear. And you are correct. There does need to be something in writing. I don't care if it's a text message, an email, I don't care. But it's got to be in writing because, like you said, memories fade. And parents suddenly don't remember or remember things very differently. Like, no, we agreed that I would just take them for you that day. And the other, oh no, we agreed we'd trade. Well, if you've got nothing in writing, you know, you don't
Mhm.
have any resolution for
And
that.
if we go to court, then
Mhm.
the lawyers, we're going to attack somebody's behavior as irresponsible, uh, negligent, um, disregarding the parenting plan or the court orders. We're going to try to make that person look as irresponsible as a parent as possible. And so that's not a pleasant way for most people to resolve parenting conflict.
No, no. And speaking of having a parenting coordinator or someone like that on the case, um, sometimes people will behave just because someone's on the case. If there's no one on the case, they act up. If there's someone on the case and working with them, they'll often behave better just because they don't want to be called out. you
Well,
know?
I think that's true, and so sometimes people don't want to embarrass themselves, and
Right.
and that's important. But again, to keep people on the high road, we need that parenting plan to cover not only the usual contingencies, but the contingencies that are specific to that particular case.
Yes. Yes. There might be special circumstances or special needs of a child or, weird work hours or whatever. All kinds of things can come up. Also, I just think it's worth pointing out right here that if you have to go to court over something petty, I want to say stupid, but I won't use that word. Let's say petty. One of you is probably going to walk away, having gotten scolded or kind of smacked down, what I call smacked down by the judge. All that does is over empower the other parent. And now, not only did you lose that argument or that conflict, but now you've over empowered the other parent and they are smug about it. And it further deteriorates the relationship. And parents just don't realize they want to go into court and they want to win. And they don't realize what the ramifications are going to be if they don't win.
No, I think that's true, and it does empower the one parent to act out, if you will.
Yes,
Uh, and again, parents are not going to stay on the high road. They're not going to litigate their way to a healthy co-parenting relationship. But we remember, or I have recently been reminded of how intensely angry people can be and intensely mistrusting and hurt and so forth. And so sometimes the structure that we can provide people is very helpful. It's the best thing we can do for them sometimes is
right.
with structure.
Yes, I agree 100%. Because if they don't have it, it's a free for all, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And while we were talking about times being specific with the schedule, I'm just going to interject right now that we also put holidays in the plan.
Mhm.
And which parent gets which holidays, usually even years, odd years. This parent gets these holidays in even years and the other in odd, and the other gets these in even and those in odd. And so again, if that's all we have, it's a free for all. And Christmas especially will roll around and parents will have very different ideas or perceptions of how a holiday is supposed to work. And quite frankly, they all work a little differently. Yeah, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that it's interesting to me that every year, surprisingly, Christmas comes on December 25th. Isn't that
Right,
amazing?
right.
So when
But we,
people work out a plan for the holiday, if they want to change things in the parenting plan or if they want to make trades, they need to think about that Christmas is going to come at December 25th and start working those things out at the early part of December. But it always amazes me how people forget somehow that Christmas is December 25th.
right, right. It happens more than, we're laughing about it, but it's true. That's why we're laughing about it. And it happens every single year with some people. And that's why
Absolutely.
it has to be in writing and it has to be clear and specific. And like I was saying, they all work a little differently also. And so all the holidays, and actually we're coming up on time for a quick break. So I'm going to save this until we come back, but we'll go into the specific holidays when we get back so people know how each one works. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about, and I get excited about this one because I can make people's lives so much easier if they will follow some of these holiday things that we say. But the holiday schedules are, I would say, honestly, George, the issue of probably the greatest contention throughout the year between parents, especially Christmas. And like you said, it falls on the same day every year. And why parents wait till the last minute to address it, I don't know. But I'll start with Christmas and we'll talk about how they all work differently. But some people want to exchange. Well, okay, let me back up. Usually one parent gets Christmas Eve, one gets Christmas Day. That's just kind of standard if the parents are both local. Some want to exchange Christmas Eve, some want to exchange Christmas morning. And I'm going to tell you what I do with my families, unless it's already in their order otherwise. What I have them do, and I'm going to explain why, and then I'm going to let you talk about what you think. I do the exchange in the evening, Christmas Eve, but as late in the evening as we reasonably can based on their ages. Okay. If it's older kids, you can do 10 o'clock. If they're a little younger, maybe 9, because they're falling asleep, things like that. But I'll do it late in the evening, Christmas Eve, because if you wait until Christmas morning to do that exchange, what's going to happen is kids wake up, they're opening presents, they're excited, they want to play with the new stuff they got. And now you got to get them dressed and get them in the car and get them across town to the other parent because that parent has Christmas Day. And essentially what happens is what's supposed to be an 8 o'clock in the morning exchange on Christmas turns into 9 or 10 or 11. And in essence, one parent got both. They got Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. And so I do it late in the eve on Christmas Eve. What do you think, or what's your experience been?
Yeah, I think that's true. And to digress a little bit, what it brings to mind is uh, kids getting excited about things that they receive for gifts. It reminds me of the stuff provision that we put in there, that kids' stuff goes with them. And
Yes,
that's not exactly what you were asking me, but that's what it reminded me of, is that we
yes.
also sometimes need a provision in there that the children's stuff goes with them.
Right.
And
And we'll come back to that one and talk about it. But yes, it does especially apply at Christmas because they get these new toys, and one
right.
parent wants to keep them there, but the kids want to take them. And again, this is why you don't do it in the morning on Christmas.
No, I agree with you. It's too chaotic for the kids.
Yes, yes. Each parent should be able, when they have Christmas Day, should be, and this is so weird to talk about in July, but like they say, Christmas in July. Plus, as you and I were pointing out, parents will wait until December 15th or 20th to address this issue. And if we can start anticipating it now, it will make life a lot easier when that holiday rolls around, you know. But that morning, each parent should be able to have Christmas Day uninterrupted. You get up, you see what Santa brought, you open presents, you know, and then they can play with them. They aren't rushing off to the other parent's house. And
Yes,
so
I
to
think
me,
that's
it's a,
true.
yeah,
And critical. And parents, that would be a time when they might be territorial about the things that they bought for their kids, but they have to be willing to turn loose of that and let the kids' stuff go with the kids.
yes, yes, it belongs to them. And as I said, we'll come back to that. It's on my list. In fact, it was number one on my list. But anyway, just to finish up the holidays, by contrast, New Year's works differently because the whole idea of New Year's is to stay up to ring in the new year. Now, depending on the age of the kids, they might make it till midnight, they might not. But the idea is to stay up and ring in the new year at midnight. Well, most likely, and I don't say we're not going to because I'll share a story, but most likely you're not going to do that exchange at 12:30 in the morning. And the reason I say most likely is I had a judge one time get so irritated with these parents fighting about holiday times that he said, I am going to have parent A deliver the kids to parent B at 12:30 after the new year. But it taught them a lesson. They did that one year and agreed that they weren't going to do it that way again because it wasn't best for anyone, obviously. But it was actually brilliant on the part of the judge because he taught them something. He's like, here, you want to be stupid? Let's be stupid. Do this exchange at 12:30 in the morning. Um, but I do it the next morning. I do that exchange at 9 o'clock ish the next morning so that you get to ring in the new year with that parent. I try not to make it an 8 o'clock exchange because they're still sleeping in from staying up till midnight.
Yeah.
So, like a 9 o'clock exchange is usually reasonable. But what's your thought on New Year's?
Well, I agree with you that we need to have a provision in the plan as to what they're going to do on New Year's. And for most people, I know in some countries in Europe, they eat 12 grapes at midnight for a prosperous new year and so forth. So there are some practices that some people observe about New Year's where it's a bigger deal for some than others. And so
Yes.
when you have that, if you can have the provision for the sharing or the alternating, I'm sorry, of the holiday, that's going to be desirable. And putting in there the exchange time and so forth is very, very preventative as to conflict. And so it's
Yes.
desirable to have it in there.
Yes, yes. And you touched on something really important, and that is if a holiday is not that important to a parent, let's say you don't really care much about Easter, but you love 4th of July. If the parents both agree, they can say, this parent gets Easter every year, this parent gets 4th of July every year. And so it's whatever parents agree to, but typically we alternate. And because there are 9 holidays that we typically observe, it will automatically rotate. It'll alternate that next year. So whoever had New Year's Eve will have New Year's Day the next year. Because some parents will say, well, on Christmas we had to exchange the night before, but New Year's it's the next morning. That's not fair. Okay, next year you will have what the other one had this year. And so it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be that hard. Yeah,
And that is a tactic that I've often used in while a case is pending, is to say, is this what you would want? And if it's not
mhm,
what you would want, you can't really expect the other parent to want it either. And
right.
so sometimes that is a wake up call for parents to say, yeah, I never thought of that. There are two of us, and we're going to have some conflicting interests here that have to be resolved. But again,
Mhm,
going to court, it's going to take several months to get there. Uh, the judge could be irritated if a parent comes across as petty. It's
mhm.
going to be a court of loss
Yes,
where that's going to happen, and it's predictable. So, alternative conflict resolution is very desirable, particularly around these issues of scheduling and things of that nature. And so, we want to be preventative, and so as many of those things that come up or that we think of are going into the parenting plan for a good parenting plan.
yes, yes. Well, and just to kind of finish up and we're not going to go through all 9 holidays, but 4th of July is another one that is handled a little differently because, again, 4th of July is usually about watching fireworks. Well, fireworks don't usually happen until 10 o'clock at night, you know? And so I make that an overnight. And we exchange the next morning, 8 or 9, the next morning. But if you're going to enjoy the holiday, you have to make it an overnight because, as I said, most fireworks shows don't happen until after dark, and that might be 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So you can't do a 7 o'clock exchange and really enjoy the holiday.
No, and I think those practical considerations are not in people's minds when they're uh, angry and frustrated and hurt. Uh, they don't think ahead. They don't plan ahead for these occurrences. So really, we're being very helpful. And I don't know if they see it that way, the clients or the parties, but we're trying to be very helpful to put in place a structure which will enable them to stay on the high road.
Yes, yes. And then some of the other ones, like Memorial Day and Labor Day, parents have different wishes. And we can do a just that day holiday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. are kind of standard times. Or the parents can choose to make it the whole weekend. And that way, if someone wants to travel for Memorial Day or Labor Day, they can. But the parents have to agree. And if you don't agree, then again, if it isn't specific, one parent's going to say, Well, last year you had all weekend. What do you mean I only get that day? And so it's got to be specific, it's got to be in writing, but do whatever you can agree to. That's my thought on that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. If the court is not going to be uh, a super babysitter, the court is
No.
not going to be concerned with minor matters. And if you take up the court's time, uh, as you pointed out in that one case where the judge ordered the 12:30 a.m. exchange, uh, the parties may be very disappointed with the ruling from the judge on one of these, what I call minor matters or lesser matters. They're not always. We have cases where we have to go to court on things like whether or not a parent can take children to their religious preference
Hmm.
and things of that matter. So um, we really try to structure the parenting plan to anticipate the problems, the issues that generally come up, and then the ones that are specific to this particular parents. And I
Yes.
think that has to be our watchword on how to prepare a parenting plan, is that
Yes.
there are provisions that are appropriate to virtually all parenting plans, and then we have to have some specific provisions for the specific disagreements or things that we can anticipate in the particular case. So one size does not fit all.
No, no, it does not. And that's really a good point, that there are specifics with individual families that, we don't anticipate that because it doesn't apply to all families, but it most definitely applies to this family. And that might be out of the country travel and things like that. So, again, items like that need to be put in the parenting plan. If someone is from a different country or has family in a different country and they know they'll be traveling, then we can address that in the parenting plan.
Absolutely, and I think that would be critical for a case where you're going to have out of country travel with the children.
Yes, yes. So, belongings. We've talked a couple of times about belongings. And I have to say, this is probably children's belongings, is what we're talking about here. I probably have more arguments over kids' belongings. And the item I put in every parenting plan I write, no matter what, every plan, the children's belongings are considered their belongings, and they should feel free to take them from household to household as they wish. When
Mhm.
you buy your kids a pair of shoes or a pair of jeans, you don't get to hang on to those because you bought them. Now, we do have two exceptions, and one is items of considerable monetary value. The issue here is, what is considerable? Well, I tell parents this is considerable by the court's standard. And what that parent and I might think is considerable, $75 a pair of jeans, $100 pair of shoes, to the court is not considerable. And there's no certain dollar amount. But what I tell families is, if it's something like a gaming station and the games that go along with it, anything that's like in the range of $350, $400 on up, that's considerable. A computer that costs $1,000. You don't have to let all those expensive things go back and forth. But other than that, the kids can take what they want.
Another exception would be pets, unless it's a goldfish.
Right, right, right. That's right. That's right. Well, and actually, I have one other exception, but let's take another quick break and we'll talk about it when we come back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about exceptions to children's belongings being able to go back and forth as they wish. And the other exception, one is items of extraordinary monetary value. And like we were talking about, George, it's extraordinary per the court's standard. Not what we think of as extraordinary. But the other one is, and this can be any value, okay? But anything that has sentimental value to a parent, those things do not have to go. So any kind of family heirloom or something that has sentimental value. So it might be this pen, but your grandma gave it to you for graduation. And so you don't want to lose it. It means something to you. And so you don't want to let your child take it back and forth and perhaps lose it. Also, when parents, if they can, agree to have the parent where something is lost replace it, then it's easier to let things go back and forth, even if they do fit that criteria of being extraordinary monetary value. So if you say, okay, his computer's going to go back and forth, but if it breaks at your house, you're replacing it. If it breaks at my house, I'll replace it. And that's why parents don't want to, or the court does not want to include things of extraordinary monetary value in the things that can go back and forth, because it's inevitable something's going to get lost or stolen. And if you're the parent who paid for it, you're not going to be happy having to buy another. And so the parents can alleviate this issue if they just agree that wherever it gets lost or stolen, that parent's going to replace it. Do you have thoughts about any of that?
Well, I think that's true. And if I would just throw in there, if the parents are going to make a permanent or semi-permanent modification to their parenting plan, that they get a writing. A a writing on email or writing, and if it's very significant and it really disrupts the whole parenting plan or rewrites it, then it's critical that there be a stipulation or agreement prepared that memorializes those amendments to the parenting plan. Um, so those things are important. For lawyers, we would want a stipulation or an agreement. We would submit that to the court. The court would then typically adopt it as its order.
Mhm.
Um, so that's important as well. But the better the plan, the more comprehensive the plan, the less likely there's going to be for need for modification or conflict that can't be resolved within the parameters of the plan.
Right. Right. And let's just touch on a few more items in the time that we have left. But things like phone calls. Is each parent going to have a phone call with the children on the other parent's time? And how often? Usually 2 or 3 times a week, if it's a week on, week off schedule, is plenty. But some parents have a need, and both parents agree, to talk to them briefly daily. Now, I'm not a fan of daily phone calls. I believe it gets disruptive to the parenting time of the parent who has the kids. But again, if we put limits on, they can talk for 10 to 15 minutes. So it isn't, hurry up and get off, but they also aren't lingering on the phone for a half hour or 45 minutes. So what's your thought on that? I just think it has to be put in the plan, period.
I think there's a good argument to be made that there should be a phone protocol uh, delineated in the plan so that
Yes,
people don't run into conflict around the phone calling. We don't want to have a situation where either or both parents are helicopter parenting. They're disruptive to when the child is with the other parent. Uh, oh, I miss you so much, manipulative stuff.
right.
No, we really want to avoid those kinds of things, and a good parenting plan can assist in that tremendously.
Yes, you can even put things like that in there. The conversation will not be manipulative to make the child feel sorry for the other parent or, something like that.
Right.
But that's one where I am very specific with each individual family with how we write that, what the parents want, the ages of the children, because you might want to talk to a 6-year-old 2 or 3 times a week at least, or maybe briefly every day. But a 14 or 15-year-old, they're not going to get on the phone to you every day during the other parent's time anyway. I mean, they just have a life and they're busy and they're with their friends and. And so I think we need to include it. We need to be specific. But this is one I think needs to be individualized.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the resilience of the children and going back and forth and their ages, uh, how manipulative the parent is or is not.
Mhm.
All those considerations have to go into the phone protocol. Uh, and it's very helpful to have a phone protocol for most people in a parenting plan, especially if they have young children.
Yes, yes, I would agree. I would agree. Another one I put in every plan is just identifying that holiday time and vacation time are not going to be made up. So some holidays are going to fall on the other parent's time, and it's going to work both ways. There's going to be times over the years that with each parent, some of their holidays fall on the other parent's time. But especially when you're talking 2 weeks of vacation time, we can't make that up. Plus, it comes out even because each parent is entitled to 2 weeks or a week, whatever they put in there. Sometimes it'll read 1 week twice during the summer or 2 weeks consecutively, but they'll each get that same amount of vacation time. But the holidays are going to come out even in the end. If Father's Day is on mom's weekend, okay, there's going to be a time when Mother's Day falls on dad's weekend. And so we don't make that time up. But I put it right in the plan so that parents can't argue about it later.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea because they have a tendency to what I heard called gunny sack. They'll hold in reserve anger over certain things and say, "Well, I remember when you did so and so or didn't do so and so," and we really don't need for those resentments to build up at all.
No, that's correct. That's correct. And another one that I put in, and I make it the last item in the plan, that the parents may make modifications to the plan as long as they both agree. But then I also follow it up, and this is the important part, and you and I talk about this all the time, that they will file whatever they change with the court. So if it's going to be a permanent change, we agree we're going to handle this differently than what our plan says, maybe as the children age or something like that. They can do that, but they need to file that change with the court or somehow memorialize it. Like we've talked about before and earlier today, it can be an email or a text message. But if it's a major change and it's a permanent change, I would say file it with the court. I'm not the attorney. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think you're doing very well as in your imitation of an attorney. Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true, and the court would probably expect that if the parents make a permanent or substantial modification, they do write it up, they do file it with the court as a stipulation or agreement, and typically the court is going to adopt that and enter it as an order. So no longer can the parties fight about it and say, well, you agreed to so and so and I agreed to this and that. No, now we have a court order as to what our agreement was, and we
Right.
need to follow the court order.
Yes. Yes. And often too, when it is just and I say just this is better than nothing, but when it is just a text message or email, one parent won't be able to find it, or maybe neither parent can find it. Well, if I'm a parenting coordinator on the case, trying to help you resolve this outside of court, that doesn't help me, you know? And that's why making it an order where I can at least access it from the court, that helps.
Absolutely. And it adds to that structure that we've talked about.
Yes. Yes. Well, we are just about out of time, but I think the takeaway message here is whatever you include, make it specific, include everything you can think of, throw in everything and the kitchen sink, as they say. But I think that's good advice, don't you?
Yes, yes. And as I say, you're doing a great imitation of an attorney, so keep it up.
I've learned a thing or two from you, George. Well, thank you all for being here. We'll be back next week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.